The following is a production of the Dallas Genealogical Society. For more information, please visit our website at www.dallasgenealogy.org.
And today we have Greg Boyd. Greg is the president of Arfax Publishing Company and developer of the award-winning subscription service HistoryGeo.com. He's an avid cartographer, genealogist, and career-long software designer. He combines those passions to help answer historical questions with new technologies. Since 2003, he's worked alongside Vicki Boyd, his wife of 38 years, to improve the research results of today's genealogists and historians. Greg is a licensed attorney and earned both his BA in political science and Juris Doctor degrees from the University of Oklahoma. If you can help me welcome Greg to the podium.
Thank y'all so much. And I'm not going to say another word about this, but just so I don't take any guff from any of my circle of friends or family, I'm going to just say Boomer Sooner and leave it at that. There's a little football game, and Longhorns are wonderful. All right. Let me got to swap out a screen here. Yeah, when I told Lisa I would love to join you guys, I did not look at the calendar, and I'm glad I did. That's the beauty of DVRs, isn't it? It's on the side, that's why we're having a problem. Testing one. Boomer, no, I won't finish that. Can y'all hear me? Can y'all hear me? Okay. All right. I won't repeat what I said already. Thank y'all for having me. I'm very, very glad to be with y'all this morning. I was telling somebody earlier, 30 years ago, I guess, coming down to DFW for that game that's going on just a mile away from here probably, we'd spend 2 or 3 hours on Stemmons Freeway in vans yelling positive things to the other cars around us about orange and red and whatnot. But and I realized it's so wonderful to have things like Google Maps and Waze and things where you look at it now, it's like, well, all the dumb Okies are on the highway. The rest of us are just getting around just fine. So I'm a dumb Okie, or actually not. But anyway, I'm from Arfax Publishing, a company that's published historical landowner maps.
Sorry.
Move it up up higher. Hello. Doesn't sound very loud. It's not.
Green.
Yeah. All right, just pretend I'm saying something interesting. Can you hear me here? I'll try to stay still. It is actually on. It's just turned down it's not very loud.
Let me try one thing here.
All right, we'll get started. So we're going to talk about a lot of stuff this morning. I'm going to, one of the presentations I give about our primary product on our online service, I won't say it's dry, but it's very pointed about how do you do a certain thing or complete a certain task. I think the feedback from this is testing. I'll stay still. I'll let you know. All right. There's still a little feedback, I think. Test. Anybody know any Aggie jokes? No. That was one thing. Just briefly before we get started, my wife and I, that's Vicki up there sitting on the 50-yard line in the top seat up there. We both have very similar backgrounds as children and migrating around the great state of Texas. And her family were school teachers, her parents, and they moved around different jobs. My dad was a Chevrolet guy, parts department kind of worker, and he apparently wasn't very loyal. He moved a lot. We moved around a lot, but then both of them decided that all their dreams could come true in the Oklahoma City area back in the mid-'70s, and specifically in Yukon, Oklahoma. Anybody know where Yukon, Oklahoma is? Oh, I'm so surprised. It's just west of Oklahoma City. Home of Garth Brooks, for what that's worth. If you want to ask questions about him, her best friend he wrote a lot of songs about her, but that was the girl he dated all through high school. But anyway, we moved there both about the same time in the mid-'70s, met, married there. And while any of you who grew up here that took 7th grade Texas history, some of you did, no, you're pretty well indoctrinated. You're ready to go ahead and be independent of the rest of that U.S. They don't, if they don't appreciate us, and you're pretty hardcore. And when I moved up there, as the very end of my 8th grade year, and they immediately stuck me in a counselor's office to talk about 9th grade classes, and they started talking about Oklahoma history, and I said, well, I've already had Texas history. Well, that's my state. And I was dead serious. I was like, I was very confused why they felt the need to I'm not trying to switch you to Methodism or anything, so what are y'all doing here? Anyway, very confusing. Long story short, we ended up moving back to Texas. We live now east of Denton. Moved here a couple of years ago. Moved here for a lot of reasons. I'd wanted to move back to DFW. I always apologized to my children. And I used to get on my dad. I said, you took us from one of the most burgeoning metropolitan areas of the U.S. Where even my dumb friends down here made more money than my smart friends in Oklahoma. I joke about that, but it was a little bit true. I told my kids, I'm sorry I didn't move y'all into an area that's got quite as many opportunities, but we've corrected that for the next generation. My son and his family moved down here, and then we moved my mother-in-law. So we're all kind of taking up that space just east of Denton. So we're glad to be down here. In the little introduction, Lisa mentioned I am a genealogist, and to say that is very underselling what a zealous, crazy genealogist I am. I'll do the genealogies of people I'm watching TV programs on. It's pretty sad. If I see a surname that I kind of recognize, there's a lot of them in Kentucky, I'll jump right on it, and I'll hit pause and figure out who their daddy is and who their mama is. And I've done a lot of those actually, but I'm very much a fanatic about the it's not a hobby, the discipline and the study and the work done by genealogists, and I love it. And that was true before I ever got into applying my skill set of developing software and designing software to the genealogy world. So I say all that just to say, as you hear what we do and what we're fixing to work on, feel free. I've got my email address on your handout. Feel free to contact me if you go, what if you could do this? I listen to that, because nobody knows better than the people who are using our tools what we ought to be doing and maybe what we ought not to be doing. So I just wanted to kind of preface with that. So while I say I'm a genealogist, let's talk about where that all began. It all began by my parents meeting each other. Now, I just found this. My mother passed just a couple of days after this most recent Christmas, and I thought I'd just throw this up here because it's such a fun picture, and it says a little bit about my family. I may say some things you might think are disparaging about ancestors of mine later, or at least their kinfolk. I just want you to know it's justly deserved. But no. This is a picture of employees of Graf Chevrolet in Grand Prairie in 1959. This picture I found, I'd never seen this till after my mom passed. She was how many of y'all have relatives who are a little self-conscious about what pictures make it out into the world? Any of you? My dad's mom, in fact, any picture we find with her second husband on it's just scratched out. She doesn't cut it out. She'll just, you can tell she dug in deep. It's very much destroyed. But Mom was that way. And my mom was a very pretty lady. She had no reason to be self-conscious other than things in her own mind, and she struggled with that. That's a serious topic, actually. But this kind of tells the tale of why there might have been a little stress in my family, and it all began in the early days. But so this is Graf Chevrolet. That 18-year-old young lady right there is my mother. She's the only one that looks scared. She really does, and I don't mean terrified. You can just tell she feels out of place. Well, she's sitting here with the old dudes. She worked in the office. She's sitting there with the owners. And then if you go as far away from there as you can go, Mom was, I would joke about it. I said, who would be the best marriage partner for a good repressed Baptist girl from rural Texas? Well, it's Fonzie up here. That's my dad. He worked in the parts department. If you look real closely, he's hiding a cigarette. And there's a lot here. It just tells a lot about, they probably wanted to get as far away from each other, didn't want to know they knew each other. Dad later on became a pretty successful business person and had very strong anti-fraternization policy. A little picture of him. Says, don't date anybody that works here. And I always told him, I said, what does that say about us? If you hadn't fraternized, I wouldn't exist. So they fraternized, got married a year later here in Dallas County. In Dallas, they got married at the courthouse, in fact, but I'm not sure what studio they popped into to get a little picture of them. So anyway, just throwing all that in there to say I love genealogy. I love Dallas-Fort Worth area. I love North Texas. My roots are deep here. They're deeper, a couple of counties north. I think I have 23 ancestors buried in Cook County alone. And some of them, Arfax, the company name, is named after the one that got lynched in the Great Hanging. For those of y'all who have heard about how many of you have heard of the Great Hanging? Not very many. 42 men were lynched over a 2-day period in 1862 for an alleged Union conspiracy trying to get a northern invasion. And my fourth great-grandfather, Arfax Dawson, met in woods with these guys who supposedly were making that plan, and he got strung up for it. Never had heard that story. It's one of the reasons I got into genealogy. It was kind of like, well, that's the good side of the family, and I don't know. And I'm from there, and my mother owns land right next to it. How do we not know about that? And it was that and other reasons. It's like, well, what else do I not know? So anyway, Arfax Publishing is the name of our company, and it was named after her third great-grandfather. We'll talk about that a little more later. So, all right, I'm getting started on the primary thing that we do, and the thing we're known for. We do several things, but the thing we're most known for is publishing landowner maps. And when I say landowner, really first landowners. And what's the value of that? Well, I'll start here with a little slide. It's probably hard to see here, but I think I put the links in your handout. This is an article done by Elizabeth Shown Mills. How many of y'all are familiar with Elizabeth Shown Mills? Okay. Very prominent, probably among the most prominent genealogists in the U.S. for the last several decades. She'd hate to be characterized as several decades apart, but this is an article of hers for one of the principles she's really made known, and that's the FAN principle, and it stands for Friends, Associates, and Neighbors. So what Elizabeth points out is something that some of us find out on accident, but she puts words to it and makes it really clear to us. When you're looking for that, you've got that brick wall, you've got that person, you do not know where to go anywhere else to look. I don't know even what questions to ask. Well, according to Elizabeth, the questions you ask are who are the people you do know, and who are their friends, who are their associates, who are their neighbors, obviously the family members of the known people. Well, that's great. So how do you do that? Well, with the records. What records? Census records, tax records, things that identify them in their place, not just who they are, but a lot of times in indexes we're just looking for that same one or two surnames, but when you're using locational type tools, you're looking at a place, not just a name. You're looking at a name and a place, and one and both. So that's what this article talks about. I encourage you to read that. So what we've done, and Elizabeth was one of the early people to come on board and kind of brag on us and say, this is what I've been talking about. Back in 2005, we actually had a product to sell, and it was our Family Maps series of books. And actually one of the first places I took these to show them to the outside world, actually one of them was Elizabeth Mills. for a totally unrelated reason, and I found out she was a cousin of mine. I was in a little house in Vicksburg, Mississippi, and looking at the records of a second cousin of my dad's, and I'd copied for 2 days her records, and the very last of it were some typewritten Jefferson County, Georgia tax records from the late 1700s, early 1800s, and it just said, "Hope you can use these, cousin Elizabeth." And I'm like, "Who is Elizabeth? I mean, who is this?" And she says, "Oh, that's Elizabeth Mills. Elizabeth Show Mills. I think she goes by that." Okay. Anyway, she's a third cousin of my mom, so third cousin once removed to mine. And our common ancestor is actually my Boyd, my paternal line. Later on, she said, "You know, most of my lectures are about the Boyds, don't you?" Oh, well, good. I got to get a cheat sheet here. So anyway, here is our website, and just to show you, some of you've seen our books, and I didn't. This is our family maps, and what these are county by county maps of original landowners. We've done 525 plus counties around the country, and then we also have done a lot of counties in Texas. I think 60-ish, I believe, counties in Texas, similar thing. And so that's what we were known for the first few years we were in business. We kept getting, not death threats, but threats. People, "When are you going to do my county?" People that really were zealous about us getting to the areas they're interested in. And, there were just 4 of us at the time. My wife and her 2 parents worked for us, and we'd have part-time help with some other people. But we were rapping out sometimes as many as 3 to 5 books a week for a period of time and killing ourselves. Eventually, it led to us, we got to put this online. We've got the data. We can present this much more quickly and broadly and way more usefully, for lack of a better phrase, to a lot more people if we just put it online. So I'm going to zoom in a little on this little graphic. We won't spend any time on it to speak of, but just to show you why we did what we did. If you look at all 500 some odd books we have, we've got approximately 2.5 million people in those books of our first landowners. On History Geo, we have over 12.5 million. So we went times 5 overnight number of people online. Plus, we've got a lot of non-patent holder, non-original. We've got 4,000 maps, a couple 100,000 people indexed in these subsequent landowner maps. That's an ongoing project as well. We've got 24 states represented in our books, 30 online, 526 counties versus 2,120 counties. Plus, we've got U.S. county boundary histories. We've got a lot of stuff I'll show you here in just a little bit. And we got a lot of new stuff besides. Anyway, just justifying why we jumped to an online product. And to make it real short and sweet, where do we focus? It's every blue little dot you see represents somebody in one of our maps. So you can tell we're really big on the central part of the country. We start with, the way I tell people, it's Florida, do an arc, go around to Missouri and all the way back to Ohio, and then points west. And this will grow over time as the Bureau of Land Management indexes more people, we will map them. So they're our source for the data, then we map what they do. How many of you have used this website? It's the Bureau of Land Management, General Land Office. So that, again, that's our source. I don't remember. Yeah, I show you just briefly on here a little bit of a search. You hit their search documents tab up here, and then you can pick a county. I recommend going as broad as you can. If you got a Smith name, then you probably want to hone it down to a county or 2. But most surnames, just put a state and a surname and do your work. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we'll show you how to do this within our website, where it's a lot more visual. But ultimately, that's where we get our data from. So the site that we are here to talk about primarily is our History Geo website. And this is our first landowners project, and this is all 12.5 million of those landowners are in this map. You just got to zoom in or search. I'll show you how to do all that here in just a little bit. So, but rather than just dive right into the how-to, I want to talk about a situation where our maps actually help me in my own research. And this starts with a headstone in Leake County, Mississippi. It's where my dad was born. He knew his maternal grandfather's name after some coaxing, but other than that, he didn't know anybody. He didn't know anybody on his mother's side, on his father's side. And this happens to be his great-great-grandfather, W.W. Burrow, just great-grandfather, take it back. William W. Burrow. It took me years to figure out this was not a subsequent wife. This is actually a daughter. But this is a headstone where I'm wanting to know, okay, who's William Burroughs' mother? William, how many of y'all saw the movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Y'all ever see that? It takes place in Mississippi. My dad watched that before he passed, and he talked about, oh, I know where that is, and he knew where the prison camp, that ranch was. I do have some relatives that spent time there. But anyway, it really was a fun thing to go through. It being a bank that was robbed. I have a cousin that worked like right next door to that bank at the time. It really was some places that were relevant to my own family's history. Well, anyway, but do you remember the little boy that had the shotgun and met him out in the road? And you the tax man? I always figured that's this guy. Because he lived there almost 50 years, and it was only in 2 censuses. He just did not want to be recorded, apparently. And he had land and participated, I guess, in society. We don't know, but he didn't show much record of it. But he did make some land records. So this is him. I want to know who his mama is, or who his parents are. This is just to show you on that website when you click. I'll show you more later how to get to it. You can actually pull the patent, the thing that they would have received from the federal government, to prove they owned that land, that they were the first landowner. I tell people it's page 1 of the abstract. If you ever get an abstract, get that first page that shows the first landowner, that's what would be it. So it's kind of hard to see. It's a little washed out. In that same county, there's also a Sarah Burrow that has some land. And the records show 2 different spellings, all on and off, plus throwing an S on the end. Burrow, O-U-G-H, O-W, interchangeable. So in our maps, here's my William Burrow that I do know something about. He's got 4 parcels, 2 with the spelling of O-U-G-H, 2 with O-W. I don't know if you can see my little red thing's kind of dim. But you can see the 2 green dudes. He's over on the left. Now, these numbers here, you talk about the way surveys are done in 29 of our states. They're done like this, where each of these numbers represent a section. And a section is a square mile or 640 acres. And so William over there, when you see the littler squares, those are 40 acres. And so he's got 3 40-acre plots, and then that tall one that's an 80-acre one. So they're all contiguous. That was his land. Sarah, knowing these are a mile square mile, she's about 2 miles away, about 1.5 miles, and she's got a 40-acre plot, not too far away. This is what you look for. You're looking for candidates, people that are close by, that have the same name. Not always going to be related, especially if the name's super common, but it's a good indicator. These are very well possibly related people. So I want to go into other records and look more about Sarah Burrow. So I go into the census records, and the first place I find her is in the 1860 census there in Leake County. She's a 67-year-old, presumably a widow. There's no she's the head of household, and there's no other person of her generation in the house. Got presumably 2 kids. We don't know, but there's a Caroline and a Henry, 22 and age 19. Sarah's born in Georgia, it says, and Alabama for the kids. There's a Martin Murphy next door, which I find later they're definitely intermarried with this family. So there's Sarah. I don't find any other Burrows in that part of Mississippi, so I go back to 1850. By then, I do find William. It's very hard to read. I find him living in a household. It's a very good clue to some other mysteries, but I don't find Sarah, so I look more broadly, and I finally find her in Alabama. We'll get to that in a second. But so in finding Sarah, I try to do the cheap, quick route. I'm going to find a marriage record for a Sarah that became a Burrow. So a Sarah that married a Burrow somewhere in Mississippi area. And so Sally, I think we all know, is a common nickname for a Sarah. So this is the only record I can find of a Sarah or a Sally marrying a Burrow anywhere near Mississippi in the time period it would have needed to have been to have had William as a son. And I find this record all over the internet, a Sala Carsey marrying a John Burrow in Madison County, Alabama. And that's just west of Jackson County, Alabama. It's where the space camp is, whatever that big town is. Huntsville. It is a big town. Yep. This is in the Huntsville area. And so at the time, if you look through all the indexes, there's not another Carsey in America. There's like one or two, and they're in Connecticut, or not even that. I don't remember where they were, but a lot of times that's going to be a misspelling. There are some Caseys in Madison County at the time. I'm feeling like it's probably a Casey, but don't know for sure. So I'm thinking I got a Sarah, Sally, probably a Casey, born in around 1800. Married in Madison County in 1818. So in looking for Sarahs and Sallys and Caseys, now I'm looking for, I want to look for Caseys and Burrows living next to each other. It may not happen, but it might, but that's a cheap, good, easy, quick, economical way to try to pin this down if I can find them. And I find all these Caseys and Burrows, as you'll see here in a second, in the Marion County, Alabama area, in Alabama, near Tuscaloosa, and just up in that north and central northwest corner. So here's a Miles Casey in Marion County. And another thing that kind of tips me off, this might be my people. If you look real close, it says he's a convict. So I know it's the right attitude. We've established some kinship and brethren. Anyway, I'll get into that later. So there's Miles. So we go to the next page, and there's an Esther Casey. Down at the bottom of that page, there's a Green Burrow. These are really hard to read, but they're all coming out of the Carolinas and Alabama. Let's see, Miles was it was Alabama and Mississippi. So, and then go on to the following page, you got continuing on Green Burrow. You got John, and it's indexed as Gacy, and James W. Gacy. That's why I really thought I had one there. So we got it, but it's Casey. Goes on down, big family. Born in Kentucky. Other records you'll see they put it looks like Connecticut, but pretty sure they're from Kentucky. Go on to the next page. There's a James Gacy. So this is senior. That was junior, and it says Connecticut. Pretty sure he was just mumbling, and they got Kentucky and Connecticut mixed up. Anyway, keep on going. Next page, Elkany Rainwater. And then finally, a Sarah Burrow, right age. She was 67 back in 1860. She's 58 here with two of the same kids. There's Susan Caroline and Henry. One of the kids is left, but the other two are the right ones. Living among all these Caseys. So I'm liking this. I think this is probably her. Now here it says Tennessee. The other one said South Carolina. Not unusual, and I apologize for keep whacking this thing. But that's not unusual for those of you who've done much research. That birthplace gets kind of warm and fuzzy sometimes. So I feel like this is probably her. And I'm going to switch to the maps and show you where all these people are. First of all, here's Esther Casey. Now sometimes it's Easter, sometimes it's Esther. And I do this, show the slide just to show you something else that's in our tool. I'll show you live here in a minute. But if you click on any spot, there's a couple of ways to get to it, but you can pull up a U.S. county boundary history for the spot. So you can see where the counties changed even though the place stayed the same. So these are the ones that get really confusing. You got to know which courthouse to go to. If you look at when I clicked in the middle of Esther's parcel here, it'll tell you, in 1850 it was Marion County, but by 1870, for one census, it was Sanford County. And then by 1880, it's Lamar County, and that's what it is today. So if you want to go back to, whenever she probably got here, 1850s, 40s, whenever, you're going to definitely want to go to Marion County's records, not Lamar, where it is today. That's the danger of, I don't care what database you use, Roots Magic, Legacy, it doesn't matter what you use. It's really hard to distinguish two places in a single record. Most of them will tell you to put where it was when it happened. But that's confusing if somebody that's not a genealogist looks at it, especially since that's not proper anymore. If you go to Marion County today, that's not where that is. Anyway, but you need to know all that stuff. However you record it, we need to know that information. I bring this up here also to tell you that there's an old Antioch cemetery on her property, and that's where that Elkanah Rainwater is buried, and his wife, which is also a Burrow, presumably another child of that Sarah. They lived right next door to her. So here's a definite blending of Casey and Burrow families at this cemetery on the Casey property. So what does this tell us? And if you know anything about our work, we're really into migrations, figuring out how these people get there and why. Some of y'all that I met today, I asked you a million questions about where you came from and how you got there. And it's not because I'm just generally nosy. I'm interested in how you migrated. So here was Madison County, where Sally and John got married up in the Huntsville area. Then a few years later, we find my battery's dying. We find a big concentration there in the middle of the page where all the Caseys and Burrows were living. And then just a decade later, they're down in Leake County, Mississippi. And that's a straight line, typical migration. If you look at the hill patterns and everything else, it was the easiest to go southwest from Huntsville, just traveling however you wanted to travel. The roads tended to go that way, as do everything else, so the people. One other little map. Let's zoom in here a little bit. Just to show there's more Burrows here and more clues that I think we're on the right path and the right people. That Esther Casey is the one up there at the top with the Rainwater Cemetery. Up here at the top, right, you see more Burrows. There's a Green Burrow, there's a John Burrow. I think that's probably our John Burrow, the father of my William and husband of Sarah. Now down here, a couple miles away, is an Allen Burrow. And the reason I was so excited to see that, I knew who that was. I've researched a lot of Burrows, trying to piece them together, and I'd seen he has a very famous son, and I was just kind of hoping I was somehow related to these guys. And his son is Reuben Barrow, King of the Outlaws. I don't know King is the right. Kings don't usually get killed by Texas Rangers that go all the way to Alabama to blow you away, but that's what happened to him. He was the first guy to rob a train by himself. Let's hear it for the family. And that's that Allen's son. I haven't figured out what cousin we are, but this guy's definitely related to me. Well, it gets even better than that, though. This is where I love history and I love genealogy and how they blend together. But and I'm also a big movie buff. So one of my favorite movies, the old version and the new version, is True Grit. Rooster Cogburn, and in the movie, how many of y'all seen True Grit? Okay, if you pay attention, you probably know he calls himself. His name is Reuben Rooster Cogburn. Well, in this newest one, he actually explained a little bit of his history to Maddie as they're riding around. He says, "I bought an eating place called the Green Frog. Started calling myself Burrows, but I drank and picked up my wife, and she did not care for the company of my river friends. Decided to go back to her first husband." Anyway, she said, "Goodbye, Reuben. The love for decency does not abide in you." Anyway, right there, you're saying this character was kind of based on Reuben Burrows. So I'm related to Rooster Cogburn. How awesome is that? A fictional character. That's just fun to me. The first time I heard that in the movie, I just went, "What did he say?" Did he say Burrows? And sure enough, went and found a movie site that had all the quotes from the movie, and he was based on that guy. So I'm going to stop there because I want to show you some of the actual site. While what my goal here today is to give you a taste of the things you can do on this site, more than it is to show you all the little how-tos. Playing with it, you'll learn. And this is a little washed out. I can't see it very well, but when you log into our site, and we are a subscription site, we're available in a lot of libraries. We're available as an individual subscription. ranging from $20 for a 3-month period to $59 a year. And I think there's a little deal at the bottom of that back page of your handout where you can get an extra 3 months if somebody from here wants to do an annual subscription. But so when you first log in, though, this is the page that it takes you to, and it'll give you a choice of going to 2 different projects. One is the one we're talking about today, the First Landowners Project, and then the other one is the Antique Maps Project, where it's a lot of other kind of maps. If we've got some time, I'll show you a little bit of that. But today I want to not only show you this, but I do want to give you a little bit of taste of some things we've got coming that are also very exciting in the near future that I want y'all to be aware of, know that's coming. So what I want to do real quickly is do a couple searches just to give you a sense of how it works. Get the mouse up here. So we click on the First Landowners Project, and I try to stress to people that we designed this so you can keep it as broad as possible. Don't just immediately go, I want Joe Smith in Izard County, Arkansas. Keep it more broad than that. In fact, keep it nationwide with a surname and just keep going. Let me show you what I mean by that. Anybody in here, what I'm wanting is the surnames, that know that they've got some ancestor that's got a land patent somewhere out there? Does anybody know? Okay. What's the surname?
Oh my gosh, sorry.
Pin you down. Okay. Well, anybody know one? Young. Okay. What state are we going to be looking at? Arkansas. So I'm going to put Young, but I'm just going to hit enter and let it tell us nationally. So it's going to be a lot. What that tells us, though, is how many counties in each state we've got Young land patents. So in Arkansas, we've got 65 counties, so we got a lot. It doesn't surprise us, common name, Young. But I'm going to click on the 65 here, and it will show us Arkansas and which counties have how many patents in them, or how many people in them, really. What county are we going to be looking at?
Johnson.
And where is Johnson?
West.
Nope.
Actually, it's go to 7. Yeah.
Johnson County. A new version we're working on will give you that list off to the side so you don't have to do that guesswork. If we want to make this simple for people who really don't know where Johnson County is. Okay, so we clicked on it. Now it's saying, okay, we got 4 over here, 3 over here, and we'll just start drilling down. I'll click on the 3, and it's still just kind of showing us where they are generally. So as you'll recall, I talked about these are those numbers we were looking at earlier were sections. Well, so we were looking at a 1, 2, 3, whatever earlier. Those little bitty numbers there are now those 1-mile section lines. Those find themselves, there's 36 of those in each of these townships. So when you're reading a deed or a land patent for those 29 federal land states, like this, for instance, this Young here is in Township 10 North, Range 22 West. He's up in Section 6. But anyway, just to let you know, each of these are townships, and they're 36 square miles. Each, so they have the 36 little sections in them. But what I want to do now, before I just start trying to guess which one of these are somebody you know, I'm going to go up here and use another tool. It's called the County Browser. I'm going to click on it, and it's going to say, we could either tell it we're interested in looking at Johnson County, Arkansas, or we can click this little button here. It says match my index to the map view. What am I looking at? So I'll just click that and it'll figure out we're in Johnson County. No, it didn't. It says, yeah, it does. There it goes. Johnson County, Arkansas. And it updates all the indexes to be all the people that are in our Johnson County in our maps. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Y, pull up the Youngs. So I'll zoom on down here, and we got a James, a Joseph, a Manville, and a Thomas J, and a Thomas S. Any of those ring a bell? Thomas S. So he's got one. I'm just going to double click on. Let's do this. I'm single clicking on him, and then I'm going to use this little flash tool, so it'll tell you which one these are. So it's that guy right there. So he's only 6-7 miles from that one, and then about that far, maybe 12 miles, maybe 7, maybe a little further than that. Maybe 7-8 miles over here to this batch of Youngs over here. But he's by himself down here. So double clicked on it, it'll take us right to it. So here's Thomas S. Young, and kind of having a problem there. There we go. So 1855, and what that tells you is that's the year he received the land patent. He was probably there 1, 2, 3 years before that. It could be way earlier in some cases, but mostly it's 1 to 3 years before they actually got the paperwork from the time they actually filed it, whether it's a homestead or a cash sale. If I'll single click on that, it will give us the parcel details. Again, it's kind of washed out, but let me see if I can zoom in. So it tells us there's Thomas S. Young, patent date of March 1st, 1855, the accession number, that's the record number from the General Land Office, Johnson County. Here's all the legal description, Township 9 North, range, all that good stuff. It tells us it's a cash sale. It gives you the latitude and longitude of the center of that parcel, so if you want to record that so you can find it later. It also gives us some links. I'm going to zoom back out, just don't mess things up too bad here. So the links down here are view the U.S. county boundary history that I talked about earlier. So it stayed Johnson County from as late as 1840, but in 1830 it was Polk County. So if somebody got there that early, you'd need to look at Polk County records. Pull it back up the details. And the other things we can link to, click it, are we can find it in Google Maps. I'll open it in a new tab. I'm going to open up the BLM source. I'm right-clicking and saying open in a new tab so we can go up to the top and just cheat a little. Actually, I don't have to do that. If I just click on it, it'll open up a new tab. So what I opened up were some new tabs up here. Here's the patent details for that Thomas S. Young on that Bureau of Land Management site. So we link you back to the original source. Then we also show you where that is in Google Maps. So we can do that. We can hit satellite view. We can zoom out a little bit. So that was some finished property right behind Walmart Supercenter. So, and you can also find the actual. Oh, I thought I could hear it. There's the actual patent.
It's actually Thomas S.
Yeah, there it says it there. It's Thomas S.D. Young of Johnson County, Arkansas. I like it when they do that. Usually they don't even say of or where they came from, but sometimes you'll get really lucky and they'll say of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, or they'll tell of Fayette County, Kentucky. And you'll get really lucky and get another little leap there. This case we don't, but it's still nice. He's probably been there a while, or they wouldn't have called him that.
He actually died in 1852.
Okay, and that's not unusual. A lot of times they'll die, and then here comes the land back. So that shows you how we get into find somebody in our map. So what else can we do? If you go back out, we can look at, did any of those other Youngs, do you know if any of them are related? No, not yet. Okay, so now do you recognize any of these other surnames in the area? Did they intermarry with any of these people?
Actually, that's my brick wall.
Okay. Well, these would be people I would recommend, especially ones that got their patent. It wouldn't really matter if they did or not, but it's better if they're the same generation and got them at the same time period. But a lot of times you'll find them 30, 40 years later, and that's the kid or the son-in-law or whatever. So I would recommend that's where you start looking at these people. Where did they come from? Where did this Thomas G. Robinson group come from? This Joseph James, John Wilson, Alston. Alston's probably came from North Carolina if they're like all the other Alstons I've researched. But that's where you want to. This gives you a list of things to do. Where you have a brick wall, it's a list of things to do, and you get a similar kind of thing with census records. But a lot of times, those are more comprehensive, and sometimes they're people that are passing through. They're not there very long. These are people that definitely invested in the area, more likely married into these families, etc. They're both good sources. You just need to check them both. So what are some other things we could do? If we Some other quick search things we can do. Let me, because I want to show you some new stuff real quick. But some of the other things you can look for instance, if you want to search for a cemetery, and you don't know what town it's near, you know that somebody's buried in such and such cemetery. If you go on the far left, there's looks like a little headstone. You can click on that. See if I clicked on it, and it'll say find cemeteries in particular state. Do you know a cemetery in that area by chance? Okay. Anybody got a rural cemetery that you think we might have? We might not. Not all. They're not totally comprehensive, but we've got about 300,000 cemeteries in here. Anybody got a rural cemetery they want to look for? Yes, sir.
Berry's Creek,
And what state's it in?
Texas, Williamson County.
And what was the name of it? Barry?
BERRY''S.
Okay, I'm just going to put Barry for starters.
Yeah.
And we're looking at which county?
Williams.
Okay. And of course we don't have it. We don't have that one. Anybody else got another one?
Nashville.
Nashville Cemetery? And where is it?
Missouri.
Okay, let me put Missouri.
NASHVILLE.
All right. Is it in Barton County?
Yeah.
All right. So we'll double click that. And so that'll take us right to the Nashville Cemetery. So there it is. So this one, our map source didn't even identify it, but what we could do is if we use this little marker tool over here, this little push pin, I'm going to go ahead and just click on there and I'm going to put Nashville Cemetery. That way we don't have to wonder in the future. I'm going to say it's a cemetery. We don't have to do that. I'm going to save it. And what the reason you do that is, first of all, it's real easy to go look at our markers and find that again. It's a lot faster. The other reason is we can type in additional information in there. We could keep all the ancestors or people of interest that are buried there. But also, it lets us locate it in Google Maps. So we can click on a button that we've created now and go look at their satellite imagery. So there's the Nashville Cemetery. All right, I'm going to take this as a moment we're going to leave this tool for a minute because I want to show you some other goodies. We've got something we worked on most of last year, and it got interrupted, quite frankly, when my mother passed. I'm an executor of all that good stuff, so my life's taken a little turn that luckily is about to turn back toward normalcy. That never happens, does it? But we think it's going to. But something we spent a big part of last year doing was working on a new tool. It's not something that it's not a product that we will have. It's more of a process that we're going to show people how to do. And that is how to map cemeteries. And I know Susan Younger, where is she? I know there's people who've been very involved in cemetery work, and a lot of you have. And that sounds kind of sad, but if I came back in another life, I'd probably work in a cemetery. I love cemetery research. I just love it. And I've learned a lot from it. I've found a lot of clues to families. It's not unlike our landowner maps. If they're buried close to each other, there might be a possibility they're related, not just they lived next to each other and they spent eternity next to each other. It could be a clue, not always. So it'd be nice to know where are the Schwartzes and the Smiths and the Youngs and the whoever and then where are they and why are they all the way on opposite ends? Maybe they didn't get along, or maybe they bought their plot later. It could be all kinds of reasons, but I like to know where those people are, and also for posterity's sake, if that gets flooded, earthquake, whatever, where were these people? It's nice to have a good record of where things are. So my wife and I invested in a lot of things, some software, drones, little video cameras. But we've come up with a way that we feel you could go out to a rural cemetery and for probably $200 or $300 and some volunteer time, you could map a whole cemetery. We have mapped now 9 complete cemeteries, Evergrave in them, just us, last summer primarily. So we're not that awesome. I mean, we work hard, but if we can do 9 of them, probably you and a group of friends can do 1 of them. And we've come up with a system, not quite finished with developing exactly how we do it all, but I want to show you a little bit of what the results are, and then we can have a discussion later. Y'all email me or call me. We can talk about it more later. But I want to show you an example of some of the one of the ones we did, and I can show others. This happens to be in Leake County where we were earlier. Actually, I could show one where William Burrow is. I think it's the next one. Of course it's not. I'll try one more. If it's not that one, we'll just dive in. This is it. Okay, so this is Rocky Point Cemetery. This is where that W.W. Burrow guy is buried. But this is, I guess what I want to do, let me go out to Google real quick, just to show you why this is, I'm going to put Rocky Point. What we're about to look at. Okay, so here's Rocky Point Cemetery. And I'll zoom in as far as we can go on Google Maps. So that's useful. That's cool. But that's as far as we can zoom in. So compare that to what we're about to look at here. So this is a drone. This is a series of probably 120 photographs that I took at between 100 and 150 feet up, shooting straight down. And we come back and we have software that stitches them together, georeferences them, and makes it totally accurate in the latitude, longitude, wherever headstone in here is. And so you saw the Google map and image. So let's start zooming in here. And some of them we can read. Maybe not on that screen, but you can get down to the nitty gritty. I mean, we're seeing every headstone very clearly and can distinguish them. So that's the kind of thing we are doing, but it goes further than that. So what we do, that's one step. The other step, or the big step, we take little video cameras that cost $60 a piece. We put them on little selfie sticks and we walk all around the cemetery with it held about headstone high. And we walk up and down the rows, get the front of them, go to the next row, come back, go back and forth. Do it a couple of times if we're not sure. We do a little overlap. What this allows us to do is do all transcription in comfort of an air-conditioned home. So we go back later and we type in what we see, and then we go to our visual, our top-down image, and we match. Oh, that picture is that headstone. That is him. That's her. That's him. That's her. And then what we can do is then get every headstone. So this is everybody. And then we can zoom on down. Got full names, birth, death. If we clicked on one, and then we can build on this. We can allow links to, well, here's what she looked like when she was alive. All kinds of things we can do with this. So what we're wanting to do is, I've been very involved in drone communities around the country. There's a lot of young men and women, but mostly men, who have licenses to go out and do this stuff, and they're dying to have a reason to go out and do this. They'll do it cheap, trust me. They're tired of getting accused of being weirdos because they're doing their daughter's softball practice, you know. So, I feel like I feel like you could go out and spend $100 to $200 and have somebody do this work for you. Take the pictures, send them to me, and then I'll process them for you for free. And then what I would do is allow societies to use our software to do the transcriptions using this very web tool. This is not finished yet. I'm not sure if this will break when I click on it. They may have to refresh. But the A tool up here is the annotation tool. When I click that, if I refresh here, so if I started with that rather than finished with that, I can say I want this headstone here. I can click the A tool. It's giving me trouble. Oh, there it is. There's a little crosshair now. So I would click a headstone, and then I'd enter the information, give a name, last name, birthday. And it's as easy as that. I could show you our video footage, but you just start watching one, and then you hit pause when it gets to the one you're looking at. I mean, we keep up with which ones are in what part of the cemetery. It's easy. It's crazy easy. And then you end up, I mean, now we've mapped 9 cemeteries. We don't seem that smart, do we? I mean, really, it's not very hard. But there's not a unified single source or way to just do that. You got to have and that's where I feel like we do have a lot of disparate, weird little skills that we've come to have over the years. We can pull all those together and really benefit a lot of people by just showing y'all how to do the different parts you do know how to do. Y'all know how to transcribe, you know how to look at a headstone and type it in, and you know how to do a lot of the. Your society could be the one we can show you how to walk around with the little video cameras. It's actually very fun. I mean, we have a little canister of water and a couple of little plastic brushes, and we end up cleaning up the cemetery. Largely to get it where our photographs will be read. You learn the hard way. You get back home. I should have wiped that one off. And we one of these actually. Well, we didn't end up mapping that one. We did one up under the canopy in Yazoo County, Mississippi. That there was just a tick problem. Let's just leave it at that. So sometimes you got to be careful what you're doing. The drones wouldn't work with that because the canopy was so low. But anyway, this is I bring this up totally out of context, but mainly to see, is this something that any of you would have an interest in, or anybody that would? If not you, a society or somebody that would. We feel like it's, you have, here's one of the reasons I got so big into this. The superhighway they keep talking about building here around Texas, the little loop, not little, giant loop they keep talking about building. Well, the last iteration of that back 5 or 10 years ago was going to make us have to move 3 of my family cemeteries. And that's scary to a lot of people who've been going to that cemetery for 150 years or so. And not to say that we would thwart that effort, but I tell you what, the more you've shown that you care about that cemetery and the more information you got about it, the more likely it is that we'll go around. Because there's so many cemeteries that are neglected. They have some flexibility. That was one of the things that got me motivated into at least making sure some of these got into the USGS database. They became more known in the general population. Anyway, I really hate to see cemeteries go away when a route can be changed. So anyway, that's one of the things. So real briefly, I want to show you, I'm all over the board here just because we got a lot of stuff going on. So one of the other projects, the one that you will see more very, very soon from now, it would have already been done had it not been for some unforeseeable family stuff that came up. And this is a place finder tool. So we were talking about cemeteries, but there's a lot of places. When you're doing research, say in the Carolinas or anywhere on the East Coast, pretty much, especially rural, you're going to very quickly be learning, they all lived in such and such hollow or such and such near such and such mountain or near that such and such creek. And Google's good. I mean, more times than not, you'll be able to find where that is, but I think we can, first of all, we can know we can find it, and then we can also get a little deeper using some topo maps and stuff. So somebody tell me of a creek or something that's important to your family where they lived on such and such creek or such and such mountain, anywhere in the country. Doesn't have to be Texas, doesn't have to be, yes ma'am?
Daybrook.
Daybrook?
Montague County, West Virginia.
Okay. And so Daybrook, Daybrook.
2 words.
2 words, okay. I'm just going to put it that way. Then I'm going to put Daybrook, 2 words. See, I'm not even putting Virginia. I'm not putting anything. So it tells us everywhere in the country that there's a Daybrook anything. Did you see how quick that was? Good luck doing that on any Google. So they're all up and down the eastern seaboard, for one thing, one in Minnesota. Let's just hope and pray the one in Virginia is going to be yours.
West Virginia.
Oh, West Virginia. It didn't come up. I'm going to spell it with 1 word just to see if they did it wrong. Because a lot of time USGS will do that. I'm going to put Daybrook as 1 word. We got 4 in West Virginia. So I bet that's it. So I click on that, and then so Monongalia County, West Virginia, 4 places. We'll just keep on zooming in. There's Daybrook Church of Christ, Daybrook Elementary School, Daybrook High School, and Daybrook Cemetery. So there's Daybrook Cemetery. There's Daybrook High School, Daybrook Elementary School, and Daybrook Church of Christ. So they're all right in that area. So so what we can do now, let's dig a little deeper. Now I want to look at the topographic map. I want to see what else is there. So I can click on this little Topo Maps button, and it'll show you what topo maps we have, and we have them for the whole country. So Daybrook Cemetery, double clicking on it, it's in this Blacksville topo map. It's got a little grid here for the whole country. So now I click on this little orange thing, and it'll tell us what years we have available. So we try to find as old maps as we can find. Right now we've got a 1958 topo map for Blacksville Quad is what this is called, but it should have the Daybrook Cemetery in it. So let's go ahead and zoom on in here. And there's the cemetery. All you see, though, is a little bitty cross. You can't see it very well, but it's right there. There's a cross right there, and that's the Daybrook Cemetery. So, but what you can tell from that is what are the creeks as you start looking at deeds and things and try to figure out where they lived in this area. You've got, it says Run there. There's Days Run. So here they would call it Day or Days, depending on what you're interested in. But McCoy Cemetery is there, Henderson Cemetery right here. I can see it better on my screen than you can this one. But anyway, this is a place finder, and it's kind of on steroids. It's a real easy way to find places. We've got some areas around the country where we'll have 4 and 5 years of these topo maps for the same spot. We'll have a 1936, a 1944. We've got a lot that are Tennessee Valley Authority places that got flooded later. The cemeteries aren't there anymore. They got moved. It's just a really neat tool to help you when place becomes a part of your research. And this is important because of the next tool that I'm going to show you. And this is very much in development. And I'm going to skip to it right here. But the other thing we've been working on is our meets and bounds mapper. So everything I've been showing you so far, and Texas being an exception, and we haven't even got into Texas. They look very much like the other ones we looked at in Mississippi and Missouri. But the Eastern Seaboard and Kentucky and Tennessee, which, oh my gosh, sorry, extensions of Kentucky was an extension of Virginia, and Tennessee was an extension of Tennessee. Those didn't get mapped the way or get surveyed the way most of the country did. They were done with meets and bounds, which is just go to this tree, go northeast X number of poles or rods or varas or whatever part of the country you're in, and then go to this hubcap or whatever, and then go that way. It could be anything. So lots of weird descriptions, and there's a few tools out there. There are a few tools that will help you map that stuff, but nothing very good. And it's hard. It's hard to look at old 200 and 300 year old documents and draw a map from it. But what we're working on is a way to make it as easy as possible with a meets and bounds mapper. Now, if you'll think about that place finder, I'm showing you a land patent in Virginia here, and how mainly I'm showing you there's a million of them out there. So here's this is in Pennsylvania. There are just a million of these out there of descriptions of, this is North Carolina, there's South Carolina, there's Georgia, Kentucky. They're out there. The actual records, the original records that said here's who got the land and here's the legal description of it, and you're immediately going, well, where is that? Well, nobody, in most cases, has ever bothered to map it. So what we're working on is a way to do it. This is a Hardin County, Kentucky. This is every deed ever in Hardin County is on their website, ever. And I got ancestors out the wazoo in this county. I didn't write a crawler and download them all or anything, but I did, actually. So here's Georgia Archives, a lot of Georgia early land. And a lot of these are also at Family Search. I wish I'd have been here to heckle Dave Rencher. That would have been, he's a great guy, isn't he? Were any of y'all here for David's? I could listen to him all day. So this is, I'm not going to go into great detail, but this is how the meets and bounds. People, please forgive me. I'm so sorry. Need one more prescription of glasses, and I wouldn't be able to not do that. So they're really, when you map an old parcel, say you're mapping an original colonial grant in Virginia from 1690 or some period, there are really 3 skills got to come into play, besides finding the record. Well, that we've taken care of. There are a lot of them out there, so we're going to take that one as a given. But there are 3 primary skills, and one of them is just transcribing, seeing the document and figuring out what it says. Well, that is a skill, trust me, everybody does not have. It's hard, and it's an acquired skill, and it usually takes training, but if not training, just a lot of work, and it's actually a lot of fun, I think, figuring out what in the world does that mean when they swoop that way or whatever, and what do they mean when they say that. So that is one skill. But there are other skills, and the next one is understanding geometry, because it comes down to some pretty interesting math to figure out how to draw this parcel that runs along a creek or runs along a mountain or a valley and then crosses such and such a creek. That is a different skill. It's almost like knowing how to survey. It's being good at geometry and some other math skills. It's not that hard to somebody that's into that, but it's not easy for everybody. Then there's a whole other skill, and that's just a good old geography skill. Where the heck is that? So what we've broken this task of doing meets and bounds, mapping into 3 tasks. One is the transcription, describing it and typing in what does it say, at least the key parts. The other is to draw that parcel, and then the last one, that's why I showed you that place finder. That's what you will use to say that's where that goes. So this showing you here just that first part where you'll type in where you got the record, what it is, etc. This is just showing the ones I've done so far. I think I've done 200 parcels, a lot of them in Kentucky and Virginia. This is actually the describing part. This is step 1, where you say, I got it from the Library of Virginia, Land Office records, just kind of general notes. It's 1,000 acres on the waters of Drennan's Lick Creek. And then you'd identify all the parties involved, because that'll help you later in figuring out where it is. Once you figure out where one of these is, you'll figure out where the rest of them are. So here's an adjacent owner, Isaac Shelby, an adjacent owner, Mordecai Horde, Solomon Van Meter, etc. So you put all the adjacent parties, any other people named in it, you put them in there. You put any dates, the date it's executed, the date it's surveyed. This is the URLs, the links of that was a 3-page or a document, so there's 3 actual images we could get from that website. So you do all that, and that's one skill. Not everybody likes to do that, not everybody's good at it, but somebody is. Then we draw the parcel. So that's where this comes into play. So here's where it breaks down into the important parts. 3 small white oaks standing in the line of Isaac Shelby's 10.3232. Okay, well, from all that, we just want that information for later piecing things together. What we really want to know is this south, 17 degrees east, 500 poles. And it goes along Mordecai Horde's line. There's a really easy way to put this in, believe it or not. It sounds horrible. Everybody that flunked math does not want to do this. But the ones that did A's or B's or probably even C's can do this, can be taught. So you do that, and once you do that, it'll actually draw you this parcel. Now, we start off with it just saying it's in the center of the county. We don't know where it is. But then we go a step further, and I'm not sure I have a slide on this yet. And we find out where, I do. So you lay it over a topo map, and you start trying to figure out where it is. And this one, I don't remember what it was that tipped us off of why or where, but we figured out it was right over here. I guess I'm already zoomed over there as far as I can go. That parcel's right there. Well, that is awesome to get any of them laid out there anywhere. Now, when we start doing those ones adjacent, we know where they go. They go right next to it. All right, everybody sufficiently bored? All right, but that's something we're working on that will use that place finder that I showed you just a minute ago. All right, there's a ton I didn't cover, and I thank you for your patience of me slapping this thing and deafening you with that hit. And for listening to all my other good little stories. But I want to point out that we got a lot of videos that show you how to do what I did when I was inside the History Geo tool. If you'll go to our homepage and just click support, it'll say videos on how to use the First Landowners map viewer. We got a ton of little 1 to 30 minute. There's some really short ones and some really long ones. Encourage you to use those. If you have any questions, you can email me on the email on the handout, or there at info@historygeo. That's a kinder, gentler person. Vicki will get those emails. And I think that's it. Thank y'all. Any questions? I didn't leave much time. I went longer than I meant to. Anybody got questions?
Is this on a handout?
I think the last page tells you, the first page actually mentions the link, or either first or second, and then the email address and stuff's on that back page of the handout.
The handout is
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, the ones that were out there. Yes.
Okay, this is for old cemeteries.
No, it's ones old or new. It could be old. Oh, now you're talking about the mapping of the cemeteries. They're ones that we can get to today. They're still here.
Okay, so all of this work has to be done to put that on.
Well,
Okay.
keep up with us because that's the part I haven't pulled all together. But what I will do, I'll probably have web pages that will show you step by step what to do. But I'll probably also have a book. It'll be very cheap. It won't cost, and all the content will be online anyway. But it's a step-by-step process we've now perfected, but we haven't documented it well enough to tell you how to do it yet, and that's what we're working on.
Okay, now, cemeteries tomorrow,
Okay.
all of this will be done.
We'd have to do it every once in a while. You'd have to go back, pick a reasonable period of time, and go back and redo it. We'd be able to overlay and keep the existing information and just figure out which ones are new. That would be kind of cool. We'll be able to overlay the old one with the new one and figure what the new headstones are. That's something else we're working on too. But yeah, the minute I got done with one in Cook County, Texas, they buried my cousin. He's not in there, and that was made me sad that I didn't have him in there. But I'll go back and do it, but I'll wait a year or two because it's growing, unfortunately. That's a good question. Anybody else? Holler at us, email anytime. Thank y'all.
All right, thanks for coming. We are officially adjourned. This has been a presentation of the Dallas Genealogical Society. If you're already a member, thank you. Your membership dues are supporting this and other society activities. If you're not yet a member, I hope you consider joining. You can become a member for as little as $35 a year, and you can join by going to our website, dallasgenealogy.org, and clicking on the membership tab.